Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Keyblade Master and welcome to my channel. And I am old Fort the Curmudgeon, Sonny. And I want you to prove that you're not on Wacky Tobacco after what you said in last week's Mega Man video. Last week I did say that I believed Mega Man Legends happened after Mega Man X5, and I will tell you why. We're going to be doing a timeline video. This is the first time I've ever attempted such a project, and I don't think I'll be doing very many of these. Most of the time when gamers get into a timeline argument fight, it's usually over a long-running series from Japanese game developers which have had either dub problems in the past or dealing with problems where the older games didn't have any exposition at all and the newer games had ton, so fitting them together always causes problems. And then of course there's the Nintendo made games, the Super Mario Brothers and the Legend of Zelda, where putting those together into any type of timeline is always a recipe for a migraine. However, the Mega Man universe, for the most part, actually has a fairly sustainable timeline. There are a few holes, but for the most part, you can actually follow the action and see how they're connected together, and they did a decent job. The Mega Man Legends is an interesting connection and fit in with the rest of the series, and no, it just does not follow Mega Man ZX. There's a reason why I say it happens after Mega Man X5. I should also tell you that I'm doing this in response to a video by the game theorist about the Mega Man timeline, and one of the things they state is that the Mega Man Battle Networks and the Mega Man Star Force happen in completely separate parallel universes. I agree with this. There is no way you can get these games to fit in with the rest of the Mega Man series. They go off by their own, and I won't be talking about them. And the reason why a lot of us Mega Man fans put the Battle Network and Star Force series onto its own timeline is the ending of Mega Man Battle Network 3 kinda has Lan running into what looks like the ghost of Dr. Light, who tells him long time ago he had two choices. He could either create a race full of robots, or he could build a super internet network filled with AIs. He chose the latter, and Dr. Wily has been since trying to destroy that network, and it kinda makes sense. We have all the Mega Man characters in the Battle Network series, but rather than being robots, they're now AIs on a network grid. So this kind of makes sense. As far as the Mega Man Star Force series, things get a little weird. It has to deal with aliens, negative emotions, humans combining with aliens to make new robots. It's weird. I can't say I really enjoyed that game. I've only played one entry. It was okay, but it wasn't exactly a game I'd go seek out for the sequels. I might get them once they hit the virtual console, but I'm not exactly eager to get them right now. Anyways, let's take a look at the timeline most Mega Man fans set up, and then let's take a look at my timeline. First, what most people say happened. Alright, let's go back to where the Mega Man series started, which is the original series on the NES. These games were by no means narrative driven. They had very little narrative, and it was basically Mega Man always had to go out and stop Dr. Wily and his evil schemes from taking over the world by blowing up robot masters. Basic story premise. Later on in the series, Dr. Wily created his own super robot called Base to try to counter Mega Man, but Base usually ended up failing, or even worse, betraying Wily at certain parts. So Wily started creating a new robot to destroy Mega Man and Base. This new robot looks very familiar to those of us who know the X series, as it is the robot Zero. So, did Zero go and destroy Mega Man and Roll? The answer to that, I think, is no. It's a very popular fan theory to say that he did, but I don't think he did it. Alright, Sonny, how can you be so sure of that? Well, it's true, Mega Man doesn't have an official ending. No one knows what happened to Mega Man and Roll between the time the original series ended, quote unquote, and when Mega Man X started. So that will always kind of be a mystery. But how do I know that Zero didn't go out and kill the original Mega Man? Well, it goes with the name Zero. My theory is by the time Dr. Wily finished Zero, much like Light, he wasn't in good health and couldn't enjoy world domination, so he decided to set Zero out to destroy Light's legacy, X, hence the name Zero. You see, X is a variable in math. Whenever you see an X, it means an unknown number. Light gave the name to his master robot X because he didn't know what variables X would start. He didn't know if it would be something that would lead humanity into a golden age or if it was something that would destroy him, so hence X. Zero, when you put it next to a variable, will either do nothing to it, or if multiplied to a variable, will always leave it being nothing. Hence why it was kind of an ironic name for Wily to name his creation Zero. Basically, he wanted to put Dr. Light's legacy down to nothing. That was Zero's mission, to destroy X at all costs. Alright, let's move on to the Megaman X series. We all know that Megaman X is 100 years after the original Mega Man. We find out that Dr. Kane, an archaeologist who shouldn't be meddling with robotics, manages to find and reactivate X. He and X become good friends, and Dr. Kane decides that if there were more X's in the world would be better off, so he reproduces robots based on X called Reploids. These Reploids, though, malfunction oftentimes, hurt people, and so Dr. Kane has to make robots to go out and hunt other Reploids that are destroying things. He manages to build them a leader called Sigma, a giant, powerful robot, and Sigma and the Maverick Hunter seem to keep the peace for a while until Sigma encounters Zero. Rather than destroying X, Zero and Sigma get into a fight and Sigma wins. However, Wily managed to program a trap. If X were ever to beat Zero, he would be infected by a virus that would ultimately cause him to go insane and destroy himself. Sigma, on the other hand, is the one that catches the virus. He manages to go Maverick, and he manages to infect others and cause them to go Maverick. And through the course of the X series, Sigma hatches various plans to try to destroy the world, and X and Zero always stop him, even if Zero has to come back from the dead constantly in order to do it. But over the course of the first few games, Sigma starts to let on that he knows something about Zero's past. It's revealed completely in X4 that Zero was indeed created by Dr. Wily and what his purpose was. This plot reveal leads us absolutely nowhere in the official timeline. Yeah, you think it would lead to something epic, but after X5, when X and Zero almost destroy each other, and then X6, Zero just mysteriously springs back to life, it just kind of leads us nowhere and leads to more confusion. The copy chip arc starts and goes nowhere as well, and I'll explain what my thoughts are on the whole X6, X shouldn't exist game, and X8 later on when I go through my timeline of the series. But let's just say that after a while, Zero realizes he's more of a trouble than he is a help to X and decides to seal himself away for 100 years. This leads us to the Mega Man Zero series, one of my personal favorite series. 100 years later, Zero wakes up without his memories, finds out that an evil copy of X has kind of gone and made the world go to hell in a handbasket, and he's got to stop him. The Zero series narrative is much more complex than the X series, as there's different villains in each game to beat, and we find out a whole bunch of stuff about Zero. However, some of the confusing plot lines, especially in Zero 3 about the Elf War, seem to go nowhere. Again, I'm going to talk about that when I do my version of the timeline, but just know that by the end of Zero 4, Zero manages to save the world. He manages to put an end to X's failed experiment in Neo Arcadia and manages to restore the world to peace at the sacrifice of his own life. Alright, this leads us to several centuries after Mega Man 04 into the Mega Man ZX series for the Nintendo DS. I do not have a capture device for a Nintendo DS, so I can't capture footage of any gameplay or story elements on this game. For that, I apologize. But basically, several centuries later, Reploids and humans no longer fight against each other. The Maverick Wars have finally come to an end. We have a giant corporation set out to take over the world, of course. And we also have a group of kids who have managed to find magical rocks that allow them to turn into X and Zero into a variety of other Reploids from the past to go out and save the world from said evil corporation, which is controlled by Dr. Wheel, the villain from the Mega Man Zero franchise. It's, at least from the first game, and that's all I played, a little different in tone. It has a few good, charming things in the story, but overall it's not as solid as Mega Man Zero. Just giving you my opinion on this game since I can't really do a review on it. But anyways, after the ZX series, which did not have a proper conclusion, by the way, it only lasted 2 games, we get to where most people put the Mega Man Legends series, which I say is the wrong place, because you'd have to go, first off, eons into the future, and second, there's no way it ties into either the Zero series or the ZX series, and yes, I know neither one of them existed when Mega Man Legends 2, the last entry into that series, was made, but there's no really jumping off point for any of that for it to have existed here. Where there is a jumping off spot, if you paid attention to the storyline, is at the end of X5. I say you're high on something, Sonny. There's no way Mega Man Legends can come between X5 and X6. Who said anything about it coming before X6? It's time for me to show you my version of the timeline. The timeline, I think the original writers of Mega Man wanted it to happen this way. However, Capcom wanted to keep on making Mega Man X games, which made the Mega Man Zero series even more confusing, and as well as put where the Mega Man Legends series needs to be in the timeline to rest. Alright, this is my version of events. Everything stays the same up until Mega Man X5. And here's where the story starts to really get screwy, where problems arise in the Zero series, and where the X series kind of just seems to go on the tangent is after Mega Man X5. Like I said in my review, it was supposed to be the conclusion to the X series. I was kind of disappointed when Capcom kind of gave it such a low budget for the presentation compared to X4, but it was supposed to be the conclusion after all. Now, there are 3 endings to Mega Man X. First, we'll start off with the good X ending. Here, Zero gets kind of killed by Sigma. X returns alive with the saber. This one sets up the X6, X7, X8, and Command Mission storylines. And I call this non-canonical X series. Why do I call this, you ask? Well, because they don't really go into any other canon outside of their own. In fact, you could say it even goes against its canon because X5's good ending happens 3 years after the battle with Sigma, and meanwhile, 3 weeks later, Zero has returned in X6. So these are simply non-canonical, and yes, I'm well aware that X6 and a game that should not exist ending does tie back into the Mega Man Zero series. However, by the time that X8 and Command Mission had come along, and by the time Zero 4 came along, they started to ignore each other's storylines. It's like the writers of each storyline decided, screw it, we're going to go off on our own direction and write better stories rather than trying to cobble up what's becoming a mess. And I think the Mega Man ZX series kind of was better off for it. And it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if we had a Mega Man X Command Mission 2 or a Mega Man X9. We'll never know. But anyways, yeah, these games right here are purely non-canonical. You can kind of ignore them. Then we have the good Zero ending. Again, Zero gets blasted by Sigma and dies. Hold up there, Sonny. What makes you so sure that it's the X5 ending that's the valid one that starts the Mega Man Zero series and not the X6 and X7 endings? Good question. X6 has him put himself away into a sleep. X7 ending has him dream about fighting Mega Man X. Both of them relate to the Mega Man Zero series. But what makes X5 the most canonical ending is where Sigma shoots Zero at the end of the fight. Zero gets blasted right in his memory processor, and as he lays there dying, he starts to have dreams about fighting Sigma and Iris as he starts to lose those memories. What does Mega Man Zero suffer from the most? He has a bad memory, because Sigma damaged his memory processor in that fight. Hence, the ending of X5 fits the most into the Mega Man Zero series canon. Yes, I know they tried to retcon this, but they did a terrible job of doing it. Hence, X5's ending fits the most in the Mega Man Zero series. So I'm putting good ending Zero into the Mega Man Zero series timeline.
Alright, Sonny. So if you think that the Mega Man Zero series belongs after X5 and none of those games exist in the timeline, do you think they still have Ghost X as well as the big humdinger at the end of Mega Man Zero 3?
Ghost X is a good question. I don't know what they would have done with Mega Man X after the original Mega Man Zero game if the plot went the original way it was structured. It was supposed to be Zero would go out and finally destroy X, not only ironically fulfilling his mission that Dr. Wily gave him upon his creation, but also fulfilling a promise that X made him make at the end of X4, that if he should ever go on the wrong path, that Zero would be there to stop him. However, now that it's a copy X and he's a ghost, who knows? As far as Zero 3's ending goes, and plot spoiler here, we find out that Mega Man Zero is and is not Zero. It's more like he's been Captain Ginyu'd. He has had his original body stolen from him and put into another body. So basically his heart and feelings are that of the real Zero, even though he doesn't have any of his memories. Meanwhile, the rest of him is now been transferred to Omega, and the two hash it out, and Mega Man Zero, of course, is the winner in that fight. I wouldn't see a different conclusion of that if the story went the original way. I don't see why that would be deleted, that major plot point. However, we would have had a whole lot less confusion when it comes to the Elf Wars and trying to have an explanation of why Zero was still around towards that period, and all that confusing BS, I think, would have been dropped entirely.
This is fine, Sonny, but with all your bloviating about other parts of the timeline, you still haven't answered the question. How does Mega Man Legends fall after Mega Man X5?
Remember, there are 3 endings to Mega Man X5. The last ending is the ending I do believe Legends occurs on. Now, Legends could occur in its own timeline too. They do refer to Earth as Terra, a standard Japanese RPG trope of kind of saying that this is Earth and not Earth. But if Legends is to take place in any Mega Man timeline, it would be after the bad ending of X5. And I don't just say this because I want to fit it anywhere else. I say this because I actually kind of have proof in some of the backstory of Mega Man Legends 2. Look beyond the part that the ending hasn't get stuck on the moon and you find out a whole bunch of other interesting things about Mega Man Legends 2 World. First off, it's incredibly dark, the backstory actually. Humanity is dead. The human race is extinct. That Mega Man meets in his adventures, Tron Bonne, Roll, Barrel, all those people are actually artificially produced people called carbons. Human beings are actually extinct. The idea was that somewhere along the way, humanity met its end because of some sort of giant ecological problem that just sprang up and killed most of the people. The carbons were built to try to fix the Earth so the remaining people could move back. Once the carbons were done, Elysium would activate something called the carbon reionization system, which would replace the carbons with human beings, all the human beings' minds and DNA being stored in a library for the day when that activation happened. However, the last human, the Master, that was alive discovered that the carbons were becoming sentient beings and independent and having their own will, decided that this was a very immoral thing to do. So he instructed his #1 Anthro unit, Megaman Trigger, to destroy the system. Megaman Trigger tried, failed, and then was later reincarnated as Megaman Walnut, the hero of Mega Man Legends, and Mega Man Legends kind of picks up where he starts off, and all the troubles are kind of started because he is now active again, disrupting the system. Very interesting story, and it's very dark compared to what you would think of Mega Man Legends, because you usually think of Tron Bon and her cute little Servbots, not this incredibly dark backstory, but it is there. So how did humanity meet its end in Mega Man Legends? I say the Eurasia space colony crashing into Earth destroyed them. And it's not just a hypothesis. There's some things in Mega Man X5 that back me up that this was originally going to be the story. Look at the world map if you let the space colony crash into Earth. Notice that it's a bunch of little islands, just like the backstory in Mega Man Legends, a world covered with water with nothing but islands. That is what the Earth becomes when the Eurasia colony crashes into it. On top of that, we also have X talk about building Elysium, the space station that the whole Mother project and the whole problems that Mega Man Walnut encounters trying to rebel against it in Mega Man Legends. He created that. And before you go, well, he was talking about Neo Arcadia, I'd say no. Why would he talk about a city that he would be building in a timeline where Zero doesn't exist? Zero rebels against Neo Arcadia in a timeline in which he exists. He can't exist in this timeline, so why would X build Neo Arcadia then? Why would they even reference him then? And if you're going, well, it's a dub mistake, I would say no. Mega Man X5 and Mega Man Legends 2 were released fairly close together. So any reference to one another was done intentionally by Capcom, I would believe. This isn't an older game where you would have these kind of mistakes in it. So I'm believing that X referencing Elysium is actually talking about the same place Mega Man Walnut will get stuck in Mega Man Legends 2. Anyways, that's just my theory on it. Like I said, Mega Man X5 precedes Mega Man Legends. Or I should say Mega Man Legends follows millions of years after X5, but there is a connection between those two games. Mega Man ZX does not fall into any type of world where Mega Man Legends would exist. It's meant to go after the bad ending in X5. It all makes sense. The death of humanity, the world being nothing but little islands, the need for different programs to try to rebuild Earth, and of course the carbons being there, all fits having this negative ending on Mega Man X5. But that's just my hypothesis. Who knows? If Mega Man Legends 3 comes out, I might be proven all wrong. But right now, that's my theory.
That was an interesting theory, young man.
Why, thank you. Hopefully next time, rather than bashing the Mega Man Legends series before you even play it just because it's different, you'll sit down and actually enjoy it. The Mega Man Legends series has some very complex narrative compared to the other Mega Man games, and what it does to the whole timeline is very interesting. It would have been interesting to see what Mega Man Legends 3 would have brought out, to see if I was completely wrong or if I was completely right. Unfortunately, we will never know due to Capcom's cancellation.
And what game's fault was that?
I don't know what you're talking about.
There's only one real 3D Mega Man game, Sonny. And despite your denial of its existence, you used a clip.
I have no idea what you're talking about, and it doesn't exist, so I don't have to review it.
Think again, Sonny. I know your weakness.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I'll unblock Aaliyah from your call blocking and see how long you last with her around.
Oh no, no, not that.
Did you know you can use the remote control to change channels on the
TV? Make it stop. Make it stop.
Start reviewing, Sonny.
Join me tomorrow as I review one of the worst Mega Man games in existence. This is the only game that I would consider a real turd, and one that pretty much helped end the Mega Man franchise, unfortunately. Tomorrow we're reviewing a game that I wish did not exist. Tomorrow we're reviewing Mega Man X7. In the meantime, leave a comment below about this video. I'll gladly answer them. Better than what I'm going to have to be playing.